Click over. I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray, author of the Dark Shadows Daybook. How are you, sir, and Merry Christmas?
Merry Christmas. It's my favorite day of the year. Do you realize your camera's not on, I think?
Oh, no, it's on. It's recording.
I just see the little pulsing glyph that says resident of Collinwood.
It's on, I swear. It's recording.
What don't you want me to see, Jewel? What are you really doing over there? Do I have to tip coins now? Do you like spin?
I don't know why you. I don't know why you can't see me, but I can see you.
I have heard your voice say that at various times in my home when I didn't even know this was on. So there's nothing new about that, Patrick. I can see you. You can't see me. Sometimes, listeners and viewers, Jewel will just call me up and say, "Hey, Patrick, it's Jewel. Oh, hi, Jewel. I saw what you did," and then hang up.
Oh shit! We're here. Oh my god, that was good. Oh my god.
I like to do that to middle schoolers. It's fun.
That was good. That was good.
And then they do it to me, and I make the same expression.
We're here to discuss episode 12,000 of 1841 Parallel Time. We're here to discuss episode 2. I did episode 1, which was you had Laura Parker, who was doing the voiceover. This time, it's Jonathan Frid doing the voiceover.
A rare moment.
Yep. He. How many did he do? Do you know, Patrick?
Not as many as Alexander Moltke.
No.
The thing, but not many.
No.
It's interesting. It's an interesting bit of symbolism because when we get those narrations, that's part of the storytelling, and it makes you sort of wonder: is this from their point of view?
Yeah.
Or are they just, a cast member and you spin a wheel and they're currently the voice of Dark Shadows?
Yeah.
When Vicky was doing it was very much from her point of view.
Right.
So, Barnabas is a character who is an outsider, and I don't know if Selby did that many, and so we're more used to seeing them from the outside, and they remain these figures of mystery. But now that he's playing Bromwell, a human, and not only a human, but although he's rough around the edges, because he is not a man of means, a man is born, he's a man of means, and then along come two, they have nothing but their genes, but they have different strokes, and different strokes will save the world. But, he's not a man of means. He's no Conrad Bain, or Conrad Janis. And this immediately allows the audience, I think, to identify with him more. And so, he is very much an underdog with no power. Barnabas either has the power of vampirism or is the power of sort of knowing that there's more going on than the other characters know. And in this, Bromwell's just, kind of a dupe who's wandered in from outside. Oh, there's a lottery. Okay. I'm still going to be mad about stuff. Yeah. And that's it. And so I think it's very interesting. It begins with Jonathan Frid's narration.
It does. I like how in this episode they go off the end of Morgan Collins seeing the woman in white.
Yes.
And I love how Dark Shadows does not show the woman in white. It's very Val Lewton-esque. It's giving you this suggestion. Hi, buddy. And
I think Justin is the woman in white. He's in this white dress wandering around. Maybe it's Justin they're seeing.
But I like how they don't show the woman in white. It's really cool. And so Morgan is talking to Gabriel. We're introduced to Gabriel here in this alternate timeline. He's not in a wheelchair, and he reminds me a bit of Roger Collins. He's like, "Give me the key to the liquor cabinet."
Yeah, he has a nice monologue about, what booze will do for him if what death comes or terror comes or something like that. It's very eloquent. It's the lost weekend. And for all of the drinking in Dark Shadows, I don't know if Dark Shadows is really, I'm probably wrong with this, really dealt with alcoholism. Sam ties one on and so on and so forth. But have we really ever seen a character whose life is being destroyed by the effects of alcohol?
No, not destroyed, but
it's a new thing for the show.
Yeah, he's using the alcohol to sort of ease the tension of the room. For those who have never seen 1841 Parallel Time or Dark Shadows, in Parallel Time, there is a room that one of the Collins men who gets decided by lottery. They write their names on a slip or just make their mark, and whoever's name is drawn, they go into the room, and if they come out the room alive and sane, then the curse is lifted. And in this episode, you meet Justin Collins, and Melanie sees the woman in white when she's with him in the room. I love Nancy Barrett as Melanie Collins. What did you think? Hi, buddy.
Well, I have mixed feelings. She's wonderful in the part, but I feel very sorry for her because someone has clearly stolen her internal organs. How is she that skinny?
Yeah.
She makes Bob Denver look like Alan Hale Jr. I mean, wow. And it's almost distracting. I mean, the costume's beautiful. That's all I can think is, where are her internal organs?
Yeah.
She is. This is an interesting storyline because, Dark Shadows frequently deals with outsiders versus insiders.
Right.
Usually it's just maybe one outsider or something like that. In this case, you've got at least three pivotal outsiders, maybe four. Daphne, right? She's not a Collins, is she?
No, she's Daphne Harridge.
Yeah, so you got Daphne and Catherine Harridge.
Yep.
You've got Bromwell,
yeah,
who's from the outside. So this
Melanie, who's adopted.
Insider tension, and who has the right to go into the room, who has the responsibility to go into the room, is very, very, very screwed up. But Collinwood is totally seen from the perspective of these outsiders.
Yeah, I like how Bramwell wants to talk to Melanie. It's after he talks to Quentin in this episode. So you're now introduced to David Selby, who's playing Quentin Collins, and he says, Bramwell tells Quentin if there's anything I could do to help, and David Selby's character Quentin he goes, "You really mean that after the way you were treated?" And he taps him on the arm, and they go into the drawing room, and that's where Gabriel is drinking, and eventually Morgan comes into the room, and Melanie, their father has passed away. Justin has passed away. He dies. And spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched this. And he goes, Gabriel leaves, Quentin leaves to go do something. And yeah, buddy. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I don't. I don't have scissors. No. Okay. No. Nothing. Doing some with the button, of course. Making a roll out, of course. Hey! You leave my robot alone! If you don't, I'll come out!
And mine, buy the Dark Shadows Daybook. Even if you've bought it before, buy the Dark Shadows Daybook. You have fallen under the spell of my voice. All you see are my eyes. The Dark Shadows Daybook. Buy it. The Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound, even though it's not published yet. Go ahead. You know you want to.
Yes, we do.
Oh, go ahead, Jewel. How are you? Hi.
But anyway, sorry about that. But
Buy the Dark Shadows.
Bromwell leaves and goes.
Yeah.
Morgan tells him, you don't have to be here. And Bramwell goes, Melanie will want to see me. And Bramwell,
I've had it with all of this, Jewel. Keep going.
tries to convince Melanie to leave. And we've heard Melanie in the prior episode and in this episode that the boys, treat her very wrongly and very differently because, like, as you point out, she's an outsider. And so Bramwell tries to convince her to leave. He says, surely your father left you enough money. You're not a Collins. You don't have to stay here. But she wants to stay, which I like.
And she tells him to stop calling her Shirley.
I know he's a very brief character. What did you think of Justin Collins?
Well, I think it's the most important performance in the episode.
Yeah.
In the storyline. And I was struggling to think of the name of the actor. Do you have the name of the actor there? Do you know who he was?
Give me 1 second.
Okay. Anyway, I think he's a wonderful character, and he's so compassionate. You see the scars of what living in this version of Collinwood has done, and you get the idea he's a pretty good guy. It's been a while, I think, since we've seen a patriarch, because there's a real shortage of patriarchs in all of Dark Shadows. He was after Joshua, because we don't have one prior to Joshua, and we don't have one in 1897. We don't have one really in parallel, I guess, Clinton, but anybody who's 28 is not a patriarch yet.
David Hurst plays the character.
David Hurst, that's right, and he also played Justin Collins. Anyway, so the fact that we are meeting a patriarch for the first time since Louis Edmonds, as Joshua, and we see two very different patriarchs, because he would have been maybe a little younger than Joshua, maybe around Jeremiah's age, had Jeremiah continued, living.
Right.
And so we're seeing one of the most sympathetic older Collinses there is. Now, is he sympathetic just because he's been driven crazy by everything, illness and the fear of the lottery and wondering where his adopted daughter's internal organs have gone to? I don't know, but he's an interesting character.
I think where David Hurst, Justin Collins, the character builds the sympathy. The character builds the sympathy through Melanie and through the other kids. You sort of see Dark Shadows. The actors always really did a good job selling. When they weren't speaking, they were selling with their facial features. So you see the look of desperation and despair on Morgan Collins's face, on Julia Collins's face, on Flora Collins's face. You see that same look on Quentin's face and on Gabriel's face. So I think the other actors do a really good job, well before we ever lay eyes on Justin Collins, of putting that character over.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
a unified front.
Yeah.
In terms of the storytelling, it's what puts Morgan on the other side. It really telegraphs, that Morgan is so hard-edged and unsympathetic and driven early on. You know he's going to be the bad guy.
Yeah, I do. See. I was sort of hinting this in my first episode I did of this, that it's sort of, to me, it's a little too telegraphed that Morgan's going to be your heel.
I can tell you why.
Good.
I made a comment like this about a different actor once before, and I felt bad because I said something that was not entirely favorable about an actor on the show, and I felt really bad for that because he had no training really as an actor, and he got much better in his career. Keith Prentice had a lot of training. You know, he was an established stage actor, and he does not give, I think, the most subtle performance that we've seen on the series. And I put some of that on the writers, but I put a lot of that on Keith Prentice, who does not sell anything other than this guy is an SOB almost from the very beginning. And this is a case where I think had there been direction, because, you know, TV, you don't get a lot of direction in television. You're told where to stand and things like that, but it's not the theater. This is not a director's medium. And at no point did it seem like so this probably may not be Keith Prentice's, but, you know, you expect an actor maybe to have an internal compass. And what Monday Morning Quarterback Never Loses a Game, what Prentice really needed to be doing was doing what's called playing opposites, where the more hardcore the line is, the more sympathetically it's delivered. And that creates kind of a synergy, and it creates a red herring where by the time Morgan really does reveal himself as wholeheartedly the villain, you should have a moment of, oh God, that's what he was doing the whole time.
Yeah.
But he does, you know, Louis Edmonds very intelligently kind of does the opposite, where, you know, as Edward, you know, we start out thinking, oh God, this guy is such a jerk, we're just going to have to do it. And as it goes on, he just has more and more and more heart. And same thing as Joshua.
Yeah. And
that's
Louis Edmonds could, I sort of wish they would have cast Louis as Morgan. No offense to Keith Prentice, I don't know who to put it on necessarily, but let me tell you when I first watched this all those years ago, and I saw Keith Prentice doing Morgan Collins, let me tell you where I picked up right away that he was the. I'm a fan of wrestling, so I've grown up like watching these baby faces and these heels, and how you know they're sort of going to turn with certain the way they're acting and facial features. It wasn't just the words he was speaking; it was the words it was the delivery of the words too. But something he does, he keeps focusing on. He's not focused on actually resolving the curse as so much he is prolonging it when he's wanting to have kids with Catherine.
That's right.
It's like, I'm thinking, this dude's a chicken shit.
Awful. He's a terrible man. And not only in that case do you just see the ending coming, you know, screaming down the I-75, but and so there's no surprise at all to that, and there's no subtlety, and so it just becomes a waiting game. You kind of wonder why, you know, Kendrick and Bromwell just don't take him out back, and, you know, it's not exactly the era of CSI. You know, oh, food poisoning, Morgan, wasn't that terrible? I died of food poisoning. You know, oh, his carriage caught fire. You know, you shouldn't have been smoking hookah on that bumpy road. We told him 1,000,000 times.
He got a little too close to Widow's Hill when he fell.
Sure.
But I do,
Ramsey.
yeah. I mean, look, I do think Keith Prentice is a good actor. I just think that whether it's the way it was written or the way he's playing it, it's not. You're not shocked at his heel turn at all, like you're saying. And I know it doesn't come at. Does his heel turn come in the first two episodes? No, but that's sort of what we're saying, and what I was sort of trying to say too. It's so obvious. You sort of know it's coming. So it's like, to me, he's already a heel before he actually is one. And
Well, here's the question to ask yourself when you see a character like this introduced. Are they comic relief?
right.
Or can I root for them?
Right.
The answer is no with both of them, and they're given a lot of screen time. Guess what?
They're the villain, yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, because when I see Gabriel, to me, Gabriel's the comic relief in this. Like, he's
Add comic relief, but yeah.
I like how he's like, I need the key to the liquor cabinet. I'm thinking, if Roger Collins were here, there would be no key.
Well, and that's a great bit of writing there, because in that one line, you get the entire history of this character and of his brothers and Justin and what they've had to put up with and the extremes they've had to go through.
Yeah.
Regarding specifically him, the
Yeah.
one guy who doesn't have the key.
Yeah. And now, in the previous episode, we did meet Julia Collins. So Julia is finally an actual Collins instead of just being called one.
Just get it over with, Okay, fine, Grayson, you're a Collins. Now can we eat Chinese?
What did you think of her character?
I think her character was married to the head writer. I don't really recall a whole lot of what she has to do.
Right.
I think it's like, life's going to be hell for Sam if Grayson's not on the show. So Julia Collins.
Yeah, and
in parallel time, it also creates an implicit guilt on Barnabas's part. It's like, well, in parallel time, she's a Collins. So they did something parallel that you couldn't do vertical, if you know what I mean.
Here's the thing, too. Like, she's in the first episode, but she's in it. To me, she's in and out of it. And then in the second episode, which isn't uncommon, she's not in it at all.
Yeah, you have 5 actors. Per episode.
Right. And so you're sort of getting the sense that really her character isn't so much of a primary focus. It's more Bramwell, Catherine, Morgan Collins, Quentin, Gabriel, Justin, though he dies in this episode, is like you said, he's a key to the story because his death is going to have an impact on it. But, again, they don't show the woman in white in either in this episode or in the last one, and I like that. So, what's something you liked about this episode?
Well, Justin Collins.
Yeah.
This is about the 2 things that really stand out to me. Maybe 3, and we've mentioned all of them. One is, Quentin really being a sympathetic figure. Yeah. with Bromwell.
Yeah.
I like that. The terror shown by Justin Collins sells everything else that's going to come.
Yeah.
The better his performance, and David Hurst, wonderful actor, sells it completely. Because he sells the notion of being terrified to the point of madness, but not being mad. And, I mean, we don't just take him as a blithering, old man. Like, okay, Jesse, yeah, room's real scary. Okay, yeah, drink your juice. No. I mean, we get that there is something serious to be disturbed about. And then getting more of a glimpse of the dynamic of the brothers. Gabriel, as I recall, isn't going to be around forever. In fact, he go into the room eventually, and it doesn't. I think he tries to fake his way out of being in the room. He tries to tell people he's in the room, and he's not. And he ends up paying some sort of horrible price or something like that. I think the other thing is seeing the differences. Gabriel versus Gabriel. One Gabriel was implosive, one was explosive. Yeah. And Chris Pennock having an opportunity to explore that, I think, is really, really pretty cool. And then the last thing is, it's that. I think those are the big selling points. And seeing what the new Quentin is going to be like. Yeah. Because we've seen badass Quentin. Yep. We've seen sort of benevolent burnout Quentin when he shows back up in the 20th century. Mm-hmm. We've seen, essentially wife beater Quentin, which I think was a kind of a very difficult move for the show to pull off. That was only in Parallel Time. That was only a move that they could pull off because they knew they weren't going to be with this guy for a while, and he really was not anchoring the series. Because otherwise, he would have been benevolent or more benevolent with Maggie. And then we've seen 1840 Quentin, who is still kind of an outsider. Yeah. None of these guys in 1840 really have a total claim to be the head of the household, because Quentin's more interested in science. He's more interested in the occult. 1840 Quentin, and sort of doing that kind of thing. He's a handsome nerd. And also figuring out who he's going to be in love with, which is always a Quentin problem. And so now we have clearly, who seems to have all of the right stuff to be the next patriarch of the family. Mm-hmm. And we have a kind of a moral compass in Quentin, Parallel Time Quentin. And so studying that difference and what's this Quentin going to be is fascinating, because David Selby is such a good actor. He's going to do something, and it's going to be subtle. Yeah, I like things.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's it. Those were my takeaways, my highlights.
Yeah, I really like how Justin Collins, to your point, when he's in bed, he says, "You saw the woman in white" to Melanie, which is, again, great acting by David Hurst. He's really selling it, and he's getting up out of bed even after having chest pains. And she's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he's going to that room, and he stops, and the sell by Hurst here is gold. It's like he's standing there in front of that door, and he just grabs his chest in pain and sells it to perfection. And then that's when they announce, well, he died. Justin Collins is dead, which is setting. Dark Shadows was always good at setting up their dominoes in order to knock them down.
Yeah,
you line up their story, which was really great. And I like how I'm with you on the Quentins, because this is really the first time we see Quentin. Really, I know the original Quentin, the 1897 was supposed to be a sympathetic character, but to me, this Quentin is the most sympathetic.
Absolutely.
He no offense to the werewolf angle, it's cool and all, but to me, this Quentin is it. I mean, he has everything. Yes, the look and the charm, that's always been there for David Selby, even in his age now. But
this one also has the best hair.
Yeah, yes, he does. And there's just something about this Quentin when he's talking to Bramwell. That little short conversation before they go into the drawing room is so key, because it screams one thing: responsibility. That Quentin is a very responsible man, and he's a very humble man. And
well, no, keep going, and I have a thought to throw in.
And when he goes in and he goes, come see the Death Watch, join the Death Watchers. So he does crack a bit of a joke, but it doesn't feel inappropriate. It feels spot on.
Yeah, it does. And that line, was the Death Watch. Actually, it would be cruel or callous if it were not the sort of thing that people who have been on Death Watch for a long time begin to take for granted. You develop a little bit of a hardness that does not read as unsympathetic. It reads as a survival skill. That's a real human moment. And it does something else interesting for this, because he is such an anchor figure that when he goes away, which, David Selby had appendicitis, so he wasn't able to be in the last episodes of the show. When he goes away, it creates a natural vacuum that then Bromwell has to fill.
Yeah.
With his, at least his potential for leadership.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that the show would have ended with the strength that it did, because well, what do you do with Quentin?
Yeah.
What do you do with Quentin? No, it has to be Melanie and Kendrick, and them, and then Bromwell and Catherine. These two outsiders who earn the right to be Collinses. I think there's a lot about earning the right to be a Collins. Yeah. And it's not just a willingness to go into this room, but it's a willingness to show a certain type of restraint and character once they go into the room.
Yeah, and really, if you really want where that's really set up too, with this arc specifically, when you're watching the first episode, and Bramwell himself, even in the first episode and the second, he refers to the Collins family as your family. He to Morgan. And so to me, it's like, he doesn't, even though he is a Collins, he doesn't consider himself one at times. And it's like, it's really interesting that you have that dynamic of this guy who is an outside, who isn't just viewed as an outsider by his family, but he views himself as one, and he is. And it's a really great job to say Jonathan Fritz steals this arc. Well, he does.
Yeah, it's like, Dan, you know what? I don't want to play Barnabas anymore, and you're going to fire me. Fine. I'm going to act the doors off this thing. I'm going to make every opposite choice that I ever did as Barnabas. And it's like, there, I'm probably going to quit acting, but at least you won't be able to say I don't have range.
I need to find a gift that says Bramwell Collins was the best character on Dark Shadows that Jonathan Fred ever played. Fight me.
I didn't say
that. No, but it really is a good character. I mean, he does act his ass off, and he always has. But I think too, the supporting cast is still so good on this. I mean, the first 2 episodes alone are worth watching, let alone the whole arc. Though, my only real complaint about this arc, and I get it's the theme of it, there are just too many, to me, outcasts, if you will. Melanie, Bramwell, even oh God, we've been mentioned. What's his name? God, kick myself. Oh, Gabriel feels like an outcast at times.
Joel, let me ask you a question. What if, in the opening narration, you know how during 1795 it all had the same narration? A seance has thrown Vicky Winters, back in time, and let's see what he's doing now. You know how it did that?
Yeah.
What if the narration on this had said, welcome to the year 1841 in the universe of parallel time, where Collinwood is beset by outsiders. And then it went on. If that were actually stated as a theme to it, would you be more comfortable with it?
It's not about comfortable in a sense. Again, I don't hate this.
Now, you just said you hated it.
I don't love it like a completely is what I'll say.
There's no one. I got a secret. No one really loves 1841 parallel time. No said that don't dislike it, but no one's really said, "Oh man, they finally pulled it together." Then,
no. To the question you're asked. Here's how I'll answer that. I think the question you asked me about if the narration would have been different. I feel if you do a narration of 1841 after them showing 1841 as a parallel time room, I feel to me, if you would have did that, you'd have just been dumbing down. You'd have treated your audience like they were stupid.
Oh, sure, Joel.
And they're not.
The point I was getting at is, whenever I come across what may be a flaw in Dark Shadows, I try and turn it around and ask, well, yeah, but what if it's on purpose?
Right.
What if this is the outsider's storyline?
Right.
And then, because I think that's that is a major theme in Dark Shadows, is that this family really only continues to survive by bringing in someone from the outside.
Yeah.
And I mean, it starts with Vicky.
That's
so
a point. Sorry.
If you look at this as a bookend, okay, from one outsider to a bunch of outsiders, and what does that mean for the house? I think you might find there are more colors to it.
Right. No, that's a point you made beautifully in the first Dark Shadows Day book. That it, from Elizabeth opening the doors and letting in an outsider to an outsider entering a forbidden room, it was always about an outsider was always going to fix the problems at Collinwood, whether their name be Collins or not.
Mm-hmm.
But it did take a Collins like Bramwell and Catherine Heritage Collins, if you will, to fix the problem that was the cursed room, so to speak. But
I would argue both of them are outsiders to Collinwood proper.
No, they definitely are. And here's the thing too, Catherine, when you first meet Catherine, even well before they get, because for those who don't know or have never watched this, you meet Catherine before the audience actually goes back to parallel time for the first episode, which is 1199.
Yeah.
You meet because Barnabas sees Catherine through the room. So Catherine is Catherine Heritage. She's an outsider. Her sister, Daphne Heritage, like we said, she's an outsider. There are a lot of outsiders in this arc, which makes it interesting. So you have all these outsiders, plus you have the Collins family, and it's funny. There's a line in this episode when Justin dies about how they can't bury him in town and no outsiders can come in the house. I'm thinking, wait a second, you already got some outsiders. And the line's said by Quentin. It's like, I'm like, wait a second, Catherine, Daphne, Bramwell, you got some outsiders there.
Yeah.
But it's really, the first two episodes are really good. Again, I'm going by episodes, so I don't think it's bad in a sense. I don't think this arc is horrible. It's well acted. It's well written. I don't know. I can't sit here and say to you what's wrong with it per se. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Well, I can tell you one thing about it that makes it truly different. There is no connection to the mythos we've been watching since 1966.
Right.
This is basically the same sets with a completely new cast of characters who just happen to have the last name of Collins. The house is much older. Collinwood is much older. It's like, 100 years older than the Collinwood that we know.
Yeah.
It was built prior to 1690. So, so many things are different. This is a new series. This is a sequel series to Dark Shadows. This is Dark Shadows. This is like the new Coke of Dark Shadows. And I like new Coke, so whatever. But I like flat Pepsi. And so I think that's one of the real things with it. There is no ambassador. If this story had somehow had Lamar Trask trying to figure out how to disguise who he is and fit in and figure out what's going on, and suddenly this former bad guy, is the new audience surrogate, I think it would have been a really gutsy move. And trying to figure out how the hell he's going to get back. But they don't even know about parallel time. There's no concept of parallel time to the people in 1841. So in some ways it's a non sequitur. It's like, okay, we'll watch this, but what happened to the people in 1971? Why can't we see them? Okay, Bromwell and Catherine. Laura has nice hair.
Yeah.
She's got a wig so big, I expect Porter Wagner to walk up next to her and start a duet.
I will say this, that Lamar, you're right, the people in 1841 parallel time, they don't have a concept of what parallel time is, because when Lamar Trask comes over, he dies instantly. Like he's dead. And Julia Collins and Flora Collins, they discover his body. They dig the grave and bury him and before they do that, they search his coat. They say about searching his coat, and they find his card where it says, undertakers, for a funeral home. And they mention the street name, and they said, well, there's no funeral home on that street here.
Yeah.
So really, Lamar Trask, as quickly as he came into parallel time,
he's irrelevant. No, I'm pointing that at least he would have been what we've always had when we changed the scenery, and that's an ambassador.
Yeah.
So ties us to that central mythology, and we don't really have that. And so I think this demands more of viewers than anything else Dark Shadows ever did, because it's asking viewers to watch a new show.
What if we have an ambassador that you can't see but you heard?
What you talking about, Willis?
Okay. And who narrates the first episode of Parallel Time?
I don't know who.
Laura Parker.
Laura Parker.
Yeah. And she's mentioning what happened with Angelique and Barnabas and Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you watched my first video on this, but here I gave a theory of it goes like this. This isn't her narrating this episode isn't accidental. It's on purpose. I think this is her narrating as Angelique, telling you this story.
Oh.
And though you don't hear her in the next episode, this is her in purgatory watching the Collins family.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but I'll go with it.
It is a stretch. I will give you that. It is, but I do enjoy the narrations in this, like especially the first two, because Laura Parker, Jonathan Frid, and like you said, Jonathan didn't do many opening monologues, and every time he does do one, though, God, he's so good.
Jonathan Frid knew his way around the script.
He does. Well, I think here's the thing. I'll give Keith Prentice. I think he did too, because I do think I think there's times Keith is overselling to be fair to him, but I don't think it's wrong per se. I think it's just a little too easy to tell he's going to be a heel. But I will say
That
I
means
did.
shout every line as if there's no microphone, and he's hoping that people in the year 2022 will hear the echo of his voice.
I did like his interaction between him and Melanie and him and his father. Like when he did seem a bit sympathetic towards his dad, but it's like by the time they do this, you're sort of already getting the sense that he's a chicken shit a bit, because he's just wanting to. Again, he's not wanting to resolve the. You get right away that he's not so much wanting to resolve the curse. He's just wanting Catherine to have his kids so it could continue. And it's just like, really, Dad?
It's kind of morbid, but this is a Collinwood that's dominated. The ghost of the past here. It's masculine wrath rather than feminine wrath, and and that's also that's a new and interesting color. So there we go.
I do have one bonus question for you because I think we've covered everything on this episode. So, where do you think, when the series ended, where do you think Barnabas Collins and Julia Hoffman went to?
This is in primary time.
Yes.
I've talked about this before. I think at this point Julia pretty much is done.
Yeah.
I think she probably goes back to Wincliffe. I think that this has been enough traveling. She's been Barnabas's friend. She's fallen through all of that, but this is a natural point for her to say, this has been nice, but I just want to be a psychiatrist again. And I think probably, and I don't know how it would have been introduced. I can't tell you what happens in the next couple of months of the show, but I can tell you what happens in about 4 months. And that's that Barnabas somehow goes on a rescue mission to try and get Angelique. Yeah. And if I were doing it, I would have him I Ching his way back into 1795, where he's got all of his mind from the present. He knows everything that's going to happen. He's already in love with her. And she's doing all these horrible things. And not only is it kind of the moderated, I'm not going to do anything bad against you, that he does in the 1797 flashback. No, this is, Angelique, I got a crazy story to tell you, and come with me if you want to live.
Yeah.
I think it's that. I think it's the rescue of Angelique and bringing her to the present so that she can live in peace and be his wife.
Here's the thing, too. If he does do 1795, he doesn't need to use the I Ching. He did will himself back to 1796.
Yeah, but that was Peter Bradford's love or something had something to do with it. I mean, they don't really. That's before they had a solid time travel mechanism like a staircase or I Ching ones or that bird that has the liquid in it that dips into the. I'm sure they had that at one point as a time travel mechanism. I love time trap, which is what I call that section of the series, the 1795 flashback. But it's kind of like, I'm just going to stand by this gravestone long enough and I'll be back. It's kind of like, don't stand too close to a portrait of Josette if there's a roaring fire in the old house, because you'll be pulled back then too. Now we have slightly better mechanisms for time travel. So I think, having established the I Ching thing, he would probably do that again.
Yeah. I like that. That would have been really cool. I think that Barnabas and Julia went to England simply because Barnabas always talked about, I'm a cousin from England.
They're going to form a band.
Why not? Oh, God.
Red album. Sure. Do they just go to England on vacation? Or?
Right. Just go there because
for the food.
Right. They just go there on vacation one time and then he comes back with her. It's not a romantic thing. It's just a, hey, let's go to London. Why not?
It's like when the Facts of Life girls went to Paris.
There you go. Is there anything you want to add, my friend?
It has been, for those of you who watch or care or whatever, it's been a really great couple of weeks for the Next Day book. I work in fits and starts, and it'll be dormant for a long time, and then I'll get some insight, and I'll be off to the races. And the thing that I'm really happy with is the stuff after the series is over, because it's not just an epilogue, it's a series of epilogues. And if I did my job right, and if the experience that the people who've read it have had, if that experience is shared among Dark Shadows fans, my hope, and this is not me being pretentious, this is just me being hopeful. My hope is that this will be, I don't want to say more than a book about, as a TV show or whatever, here's some essays about some episodes we didn't cover in the first book. But it will actually have kind of an emotional roundness to it, an impact to it. One of the things that I really like doing in obituaries, and essentially what are the day books but obituaries for the show, is trying to give some sort of voice to why these things matter to fans, so that they can look at it, and maybe if there's a lot of information like Dark Shadows, but if they look at it the way I do, they sort of look at it and say, you know what, yes, that's why that mattered to me, that's why that really was resonant with me. It's articulated. And whereas I've sort of done that episode by episode, I think here I think I may be approaching doing it about the series without saying, now here's a big essay about the overall series. Although I do a little of that, but not as much as you might think. It's much more in a show don't tell. There's a very surprising end, and there's a very surprising end that merits the words "the end," which I have at it. That's not saying there's not going to be another Dark Shadows Day book, maybe, but it does feel like this is a proper place to put the words "the end" in an emotionally satisfying way. And so I know that's all very vague, but that's kind of a Daybook Unbound preview. Wallace is starting officially, I think, on the 26th, which is going to be today in about 17 minutes, on the typesetting.
Cool.
And so I'm very, very, very keen on that. Mark Perry has done a wonderful introduction. There's a new introductory conclusion that I did that's sort of a roadmap for things. And the epilogues are good. And there's some very unreleased material that I think people are really going to like. I just want people to love this book as much as I've loved doing it. It started, as I've said before, it started out as a cheap cash grab, of course, with stuff I didn't put in the first book and then stuff I wrote after. But once I kind of started assembling it and looking at it, and it has a very different feel. There's a lot more sort of commentary with the commentary, I think, and that creates it's just a different book, and I'm happy with that. It's not just more of the same.
Cool. Is there, you had said about the audio for your first book, is there a release date on that yet? Well,
I'm gonna have to talk to Amazon, because I don't know how long it's going to take Wallace to do this. I know that he's going to be using sort of the original template, because he wants the books to kind of look and feel this, like they're both siblings.
Right.
So even if he does that very quickly, then there's going to be the editing process, where I sort of go through and do an inadequate proofreading and change a bunch of stuff and all of that. So originally it was supposed to be something like January 18th or something. It's in the, if you go to Amazon and look up when the Daybook Kindle version is coming out, it says that. But if it's not that, it'll be gosh darn soon. Yeah. And my hope is that the audiobook will be ready then. There's a really bright filmmaker, a guy named John Hudgens, who did a movie called American Scary about horror movie hosts. And John is very generously engineering the Daybook audiobook. And so it's kind of somewhat contingent on his schedule. I know that Mary D. Johnson, who is just the best in the world, she's so good. She's my reader. Well, she's one of the best in the world. I couldn't use everything. Sorry. But Mary's very good. And she's already started recording Daybook Unbound.
Cool.
So there's that.
Cool. Awesome stuff. A link to where you can get the first Dark Shadows Daybook will be in the description box. Go pick that up. It is very informative. That book, if you've never heard of Dark Shadows, will make you a Dark Shadows fan. It's that great. People
who do not know the show, but who have read the book, due to, guilt and emotional manipulation on my part, have all really enjoyed it. The one of the pieces of praise that I'm very proud of, is that, someone said, I didn't know Dark Shadows at all, but I really, I could read the book. It was enjoyable. And so, yeah.
It really is. It's a work of art, and so is the artwork in it too.
Oh, God.
Shout out to Wallace.
I don't say that much about my own work, but you know what? We did okay.
Yeah, you guys did great. The Dark Shadows Daybook, go pick it up if you haven't. Link will be in the description box. For my buddy Patrick McCray, I'm Joel Sains. Patrick, enjoy the rest of your Christmas and have a happy New Year, my friend.
Take care, sir.
Bye-bye.